I'm just wondering, right? Like, if some nut job militia came out of in Alabama or whatever and started murdering people in neighboring states, right? And then went back to Alabama, and they're all sort of like hiding out among the town or whatever. Like, and the U.S. Air Force did to Alabama what Israel's done to Gaza. Like, would you be okay with that?
Wait, hold on. Before anybody gets it, Vivian, I'm going to say that this is a horrible analogy. Can you guess why?
I can guess why. It's the point that I'm going to argue with you about. But do you have an answer to the question first?
No, 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 no. The analogy, I'm going to reject the analogy, but I'm curious if you'll know why I would reject the analogy, because it's a ridiculous analogy, and you've made like 3 of them so far. I'm curious if you have any idea why, or if you are truly thinking these are good analogies. I'm just curious what you'll say. If I'm going to reject the analogy, why would you think I would reject any of these analogies?
Well, I think you're probably going to reject the analogy because you're going to say that that Alabama's like part of the United States, right? And those are American citizens, as opposed to Gaza, who are ostensibly under the governance of Hamas.
No,
And
not even
not
close.
Israeli citizens.
What I'm
No?
gonna say
Okay.
is you're pointing out one lone shooter or one lone gunman in a state that the vast majority of the state would probably heavily reject and would probably cooperate with the rest of the federal
No, it
government.
said some nut job militia came out. Right, I'm talking about
Even a
decent
nut
amount of
job
people.
militia. Notice how you have to phrase that nut job militia. What if you made it
Yeah,
more accurate?
like
What
the
if you
nut
said?
job
What if you
Hamas
said?
terror.
What if you said that? What if you said that Arizona was being invaded by the LAPD? That the LAPD grabbed 50,000 officers. They would cross the border into Arizona to shoot and kill people and then go back to California. And that when the federal government was like, we need to see these shooters, and they go, sorry, we're a sanctuary city. We don't cooperate with the federal government. And then these attacks continued for 20 years. At that point, and let's say that the citizens of LA were like, they haven't held elections for a while, but we did vote them in, and we do think that we need to be violent against Arizona because it's fucking Arizona. Jesus, who likes Arizona, right?
But also, the LAPD was funded by China,
No,
Russia.
we don't even need that part.
North
We don't even
Korea.
need that part. We don't need
This
that
is
part.
difficult for me because my knowledge of American geography is about as good as Stephen's
I've
knowledge
got-
of geography. in general.
Okay. One at a time. One at a time.
Steven, so with that analogy, or we can go with like Tijuana and the
Wait,
cartels, right?
wait.
No,
Hold on.
no,
Hold on.
no,
I want
hold on, I
Vivian
don't
to
wanna
engage
jump,
with
wait.
that. I want Vivian to engage with that. The police force.
Right. So
of
you're
a
talking
neighboring
about
state-
the length of the situation, right?
No, I'm talking
Okay,
about
but
the
what's
fact that it's the representative police force of a region that ostensibly has some kind of support from the citizens and is like operating in a territory with said citizens, then they're going over and doing terror attacks on a neighboring state.
Okay, cool. In that situation, would you be okay with the response from the American government?
If the
Being the
American
same as
government
Israel.
said, if the American government went to California and said, California, you need to turn these people over, and California says, not only we're not going to turn these people, if you try to come in and get them, we will fucking kill you, and we're going to start hiding these cops in like civilian houses and shit. If at some point these attacks continued against Arizona, the U.S. government's like, okay, well, we're going to start marking houses and bombing parts of your cities if you're not going to do anything about this. Yeah, I think that there is a stronger argument for the federal government there to do violent intervention. Yes.
Okay, because I mean, like mainly my point with that is that they're still that these people are at least to some extent the responsibility of the Israeli government. We're not really talking about a war between two foreign powers. Like it's almost a civil war.
How is it a civil? It's not a. How is it a civil war?
Well, because Israel occupy Gaza, right, and a military occupation.
Does an occupied territory become part of a civil war if it's an occupied territory?
I said it's akin to a civil war.
It's not
right?
akin to a
It's
civil
not
war. A
the
civil
same
war
as,
is two of the same people fighting against each other. Pretty sure Palestinians would rope you if you called it a civil war because I mean that's consider themselves the same people as the European settlers that came in.
A civil war is not. Okay, a civil war is not necessarily two of the same people. It can be two different ethnic demographics, definitely. Two different religious demographics, definitely. Right? It's that these two people are united under one government, right? Which is essentially the claim that I'm making is that at least to some degree, Israel governs Gaza, right?
Israel does not
control what
govern
goes in,
Gaza.
control
They
what
have
goes in.
blockades and stuff, but it's not. They're not governing it. There was a separate government. There is a separate.
there is a separate government. You're absolutely right, right? That's why I said to some extent, Israel has control over Gaza, right? Israel is a governing force in Gaza because it controls certain things about the way people get to live in Gaza, especially what resources they can have, but also where they can go, what they can do, etc.
Sure. I mean, if you want to do it akin to a civil war, I mean, if that's the case, then you probably would expect to see this level of destruction. Then, right? How many didn't over 500,000 people die in the U.S. Civil War? Like, there's a lot of. I mean, if that's the comparison you want to go with, but
yeah, to put it in super simple terms, like I think Israel has as much responsibility, or nearly as much responsibility, for the citizens of Gaza as they do for their own citizens, right? The people they would actually consider their citizens, and especially even more so in the West Bank, right, where they're still murdering people.
And also where Palestinians are murdering Israelis and other terrorist groups are murdering Israelis as well, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Palestinian terror groups are murdering Israelis, and Israeli terror groups are murdering Palestinians, and the Israeli state is murdering Palestinians, and the Israeli state actually has appointed ministers within its administration who are members of terrorist groups, or who were members of terrorist groups that have murdered Palestinians. Yep, and in Gaza, you have a devolved government, let's call it, right, in Hamas, who are terrorists who've murdered Israeli citizens, etc., etc., etc. Right? But my point
that's
is
fine.
that,
And the leader of
Israel,
the leader of the PLO, the moderate Palestinian government that the rest of the world is hoping to hand shit over to. Okay, Abbas, his PhD dissertation was literally talking about the relationship between Nazism and Zionism.
Nobody has any fucking faith in Abbas. Everybody's like, Abbas is useless, right? Even in the West Bank, nobody has any fucking faith in Abbas. Anybody proposing Abbas to take over is a fucking idiot, all right? But like,
okay, that's a trend, by the way, in Palestinian leadership, that nobody can lead them because they're all fucking terrorists or insane. That's not like a unique thing with Abbas.
As
That's a
opposed
pretty broad
to
statement to make about all Palestinians.
I said
As opposed to-
Palestinian leaders.
Well, most of them have been involved in politics for a really long time and have seen multiple wars, right? So yeah, I mean they're going to be militants. Generally.
Oh, well then that's an excuse for Israel as well then too.
So my
they've all
question
been
is,
in multiple
like,
wars as well. Yeah.
I never said it was an excuse. It's just a reason, right? Like, I don't know why you're trying to keep pigeonholing me into like, oh, you're supporting Hamas, blah blah. Hamas, absolutely, 100%. Fuck Hamas, okay? Fuck Hamas. Fuck any act of terrorism which deliberately targets civilians. The only reason that I'm talking about Israel targeting civilians is because that's what this conversation is currently about. If you want to have a conversation about what happened on October 7th and talk about how fucking awful and disgusting Hamas are, I'm completely fine to do that. I just don't think it's particularly useful, because what's happening right now, right, is that Israel are leveling half the Gaza Strip. They're forcing the population to move further and further and further south. They've cut off. We now have a situation in which people are living on starvation rations, don't have access to electricity, water, whatever, right? And we're looking at a massive humanitarian atrocity, and the attitudes of people in the Israeli government are what matters to this, not the attitudes of people in Hamas, except maybe with regards to like how long you can make a ceasefire last. But I don't think that the Israeli government want a ceasefire to last.
Of course
right?
they don't, because they want to get rid of Hamas.
Yeah,
because all the people that are screaming
Hamas.
No, they've violated ceasefires before to continue to stoke it, because they want their military to seem much more superior in the region, to use their deterrence
they have,
capacity.
but I think they do really need
and because
to,
they want to stall the political process. They do not want Gaza or Palestine to become a state. They don't.
I think
the Two Party does not want Gaza to become a state.
Wait, hold on. Literally
with you
everybody violates ceasefires. Okay, number one, everybody violates ceasefires. Number one, and number two, I mean, right now they probably don't want them to become a state, because who the f- would even lead that Palestinian state?